So we've asked Sarah Fangman, who you heard from on Tuesday morning, to welcome you here. She's the superintendent of the Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary. They're going to give the manager's perspective on reef restoration. Sarah?
So it's interesting you talk about being big and being bold. I have those who have been in my office. There's a little sticky on my computer to remind me, because I think in my job I can't be anything but big and bold and have any hope of succeeding. So I believe that idea. Anyway, so I have the opportunity to talk about restoration and intervention from a manager's perspective. Before I do that, I have been asked to highlight two things that happened this week. Just a quick recap of some important things that happened relative to reef managers. On Monday, and it feels like that was about a month ago, we gathered a collection of reef managers, reef practitioners, and scientists to take a test drive with a new tool that is being drafted to help reef managers make decisions about restoration and planning restoration. So we kind of gave that a test, provided, I hope, some useful feedback. And if you did not get a chance to participate in that, but you're interested in it, Liz Shaver's email is on the slide here. She would welcome your input. They are hoping, it's my understanding, to release that in the spring of 2019. So heads up on that. One other thing that happened this week that I want to call attention to is yesterday, about 60 reef managers and other interested folks collected in one of the rooms and had a conversation about the launch of the Restoration Consortium's new management working group. We had a lively discussion. There were a lot of ideas. There was a lot of interest in finding ways to communicate with one another, to learn from one another as reef managers. There wasn't a lot of time, so we didn't figure out all of the answers in one session, but know that that has launched. We are talking about trying to find ways to interact more, not just as managers, but with scientists. And then there was also discussion about how this new working group would interact with the other working groups that exist. So again, if you didn't get a chance to participate in that and you are interested, contact Liz, because now is the opportunity to help shape how that group works and what the focus is of that conversation. So with that, I will switch gears and talk about the Florida Keys. And so I will start with the obvious, which is that our reefs have degraded. We have lost a lot of stony coral cover. We've lost other community attributes. And so our ecosystem is not where it is and where it should be. We all know there are a lot of different causes for those declines. We also know that these changes have exceeded natural rates and natural ranges of variation. These changes have largely been in the wrong direction, and we know that they are probably already having negative economic and social consequences. Some of you, I'm sure, heard talks this week about the coral disease outbreak that is underway in the Florida Reef Tract. And so you know that our situation is even more urgent because of that event. So again, sort of stating the obvious, but I think it is important to state, traditional management measures are not going to be enough to restore our reef ecosystem here in Florida. They just are not. So the Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary and the state recognize that active restoration efforts are necessary to improve the health of our reefs. The central goal of this effort is to restore the structure and the ecosystem function of this degraded ecosystem while making sure that we are creating coral diversity enough that we can respond to other changes that we can expect in the future. We heard just a moment ago about risk. We recognize that testing and implementing new strategies will, it says may, but will require risk. And as you heard just a moment ago, we can face risk or we can face failure. Inaction is not an option. We will fail in some of the things that we test. So failure will be a part of it, but we cannot fail by not trying. So the Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary is working with the Department of Environmental Protection and FWC, among others, to develop a set of restoration guidelines. Now, I use that term rather loosely, but these guidelines are intended to provide transparency, to provide information to those of you in the audience and those down in this room who are interested in doing restoration in the Florida Keys. As an example, we would like to create a set of ideas or actions that we consider kind of green light actions. These are things that if you propose it, you can expect that we will likely support it. There might be a separate category that's sort of the yellow light category of activities. These are the sorts of activities that we will discuss with you how to do them such that, maybe in a pilot sort of setting. And then lastly, there may be a category of activities that at this point in time we are not yet ready to support here in the Florida Keys. For example, maybe bringing a new species from the Pacific and putting it here. I don't know what it is. We have a draft of the guidelines. We don't have them finalized, but we are working on that, again, to provide transparency. As a part of this process, we are also working to, along with the state, streamline our permitting process. I know there's a few people in here that will be glad to hear that. I bet I know who's clapping. We recognize that there are certain activities that are established. There are practitioners out there that have been doing this for a long time. Let's find a way to move those permits along more quickly. That is not to say I am sorry, but we can just throw the doors wide open. We have rules, we still have laws that we have to follow, but we are working to try to make that easier. Our intention is we want the Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary to be a place where researchers come to test these new techniques. And we are working to prepare ourselves and our permitting process to make that possible and to support that. So in essence, we are looking to support progressively more comprehensive reef research and restoration activities. Moving forward, we are prepared to begin considering intervention strategies that may have, just a few years ago, been taboo. As a part of all of this, the sanctuary will be developing a strategy with goals and objectives for restoration. Again, so that we can transmit and communicate to all of you what it is we are trying to achieve. We are not trying to achieve 1962, 1958. We want to create a holistic approach where the goal is a functioning ecosystem that supports biodiversity and ecosystem function and service. As a part of this plan, we want to monitor these activities so that we can judge what kind of outcome we're getting, so that it can inform how we move forward. This is going to be a process where we want to invite others to be involved in helping us shape this strategy. We certainly, I'm so proud that we have had so many of our staff able to be here, and we have been soaking up so much information. And this information from this week, these conversations will be helping us shape that. Speaking of process, we have been involved in a process for a number of years where we are looking at how we manage the Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary, and many of you in the room have been a part of that process. We are preparing in the spring to release a set of draft alternatives, and in those we are proposing new zones that are focused on active coral reef ecosystem restoration. We are proposing to strengthen regulations in existing zones to reduce human impacts. We are proposing to expand existing zones to protect additional habitats, and we will be proposing new zones to facilitate research and restoration activities. This has been a process that has taken several years. It has been a participatory process, and We are calling it our blueprint for restoration. Included in that blueprint is the concept of restoration demonstration sites. And so these are areas that we will identify that we will encourage restoration and focus concentrated efforts so that we can build upon already existing outplanting efforts and put new techniques into the mix and try to learn how can the sum of all the parts be more than just individual projects. All of this is intended to demonstrate what is possible with the hope that we will inspire people and inspire action towards not just more restoration, but addressing the problems that got us here in the first place. It's completely obvious to me after spending the last 3 or 4 days with all of you that we are not out of options, we are not out of ideas, and we are not out of possibilities. And so for us, the role as a reef manager for me is to help determine how we use those tools and under what circumstances they are appropriate. To me, this reflects a sort of an evolution of management of the Florida Keys. When the Florida Keys was first established, our role was in protecting. We managed activities. We managed what people did. After certain incidents, ship groundings, etc., we got in the business of repairing. Now I believe we need to evolve and adapt and really focus our efforts on comprehensive restoration. And so this is going to involve change. It's going to involve struggle. I am not so naive to stand up here and think that this is going to be easy. I know it's not. That's why that little sticky on my computer says, be bold, be brave, be big. We're going to try. Because, and I like quotes, because change does not roll in on the wheels of inevitability, but comes through continuous struggle. So, thank you very, very much. Appreciate it.